it's almost like a lot of sermons, I would say, are the grifter version of the Bible. Because they're taking, like, they're getting people in the door with lights, cameras, and action, like, as far as they're just making a production, getting people in the door.
Good music.
And then they're providing basically a TED Talk sermon with some Bible verses. And then those are, I'd call, the soundbites. And then those people are going out being representations of Christ, like, and then, like, they don't, because they're not actually digging into the Bible in any sort of way. You're getting a couple verses on Sunday. You have no idea what the context is of the Bible or the verses or the book that's in there. They're probably not reading it themselves, and like that's their whole experience of Christianity is the soundbite version of Christianity.
100%. Welcome back, everybody. This is a podcast about grifting, and we're going to bring up the latest and greatest grifter here on the fitness influencer side of things, the Liver King, who I absolutely thought was a crock of BS since day one. I knew the dude was not natural unless he was in like that 1.11%, even if he was.
Judging by his arm genetics, that's a no.
His leg genetics.
Number one. God, so bad.
Is there even an example of someone that is that big and
like
that
Ronnie
lean?
Coleman natural? Like, he was probably like the absolute amazing specimen. If you look at his like early 90s photos, when he's very open. Like when he was 30, he started to take gear. But before that, he was natural. And if you look at his natural state, it's insane. It's like that's great, which makes sense because like when he did go on to gear, he was just like that
Blew
much
up. Yeah.
more of like what do you call that?
Just an outlier, specimen of this human man species. All right, cool. Let's get a prayer because we forgot last time.
Yeah, you lead.
All right. Let's do this. Father, thank you for your graciousness and giving us such wonderful opportunities and the wonderful people you've made and their contributions. Thank you for the warriors out there, the guys and women that are putting forward an effort that's true, that are not grifting, that are trying to give back and really give something authentic that's going to help people. And those people are heroes, and they're the people that you look down on and say, good job. So we're thankful for those people, our parents in our life, our family members, some of the unsung heroes, as well as the guys that got the limelight shining dead on them. We're thankful for them too, and we pray for their continued passion to help, even in the midst of, we know that the battles that are going to be fought, the hard ones, Lord, as you've shown us in your word, are the ones where there's not a whole lot of people looking on. We're paying attention to the real needs. So continue putting that in our hearts and those who you've ordained as your children, and help us continue fighting the good fight. And we thank you for this podcast, for family members getting here safely in the holiday season and enjoying them, and forging new ground in our relationships and growing together. In your awesome name, Father. Amen.
Amen. So this podcast is about not only grifters, because those have existed. Charlatans is another way to talk to them. But, I mean, grifting is, everyone needs to make money, and we're not against that. Everyone should be able to monetize the things that are of value to them. They spend a lot of time in their life creating and putting their energy into, and hopefully to give of benefit to other people. And that's a good thing. We want people to do that. That's a good thing. But it's when people are dishonest about what they're doing, or they're using their methods of portraying what they're doing as something other than what it is. And
false pretense.
It's lying, charlatanism. And then there's also another point of what we're trying to bring up is, why are these people so successful so often in our world? Because it's not like something, it's like I just said, it's not like something that just comes up. This is something that once, like, it's not a novelty within
generation
history.
Has their
every year has their and they're all has their grifters and these charlatans. And usually, and I just need to stop saying grifters, because grifting is not, it's the charlatans. These charismatics, these guys with these, with these plans, with these, they sell them off to people that want the silver bullet. Pretty much, they want something that's easy, that they don't have to invest a whole lot of time in, something they can follow, bang, 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 and get these results.
Well, let's talk about why do they become popular? It's because we as consumers want the silver bullet.
That's right.
So, and really, it's like they're just taking advantage of the sheep out there, essentially.
Yeah. And I really think about an old theme like alchemy. back in the day, the beginning of science was centered around, I think, like the Egyptians and some predecessors before them. They thought vibration would somehow be able to change something like lead into gold in an instant. And it was like, just get the vibration right, and boom, you're going to have this incredible transformation of crap into valuable stuff. And so I think that's conception holds true for a lot of people, because you see somebody in a place or they have something that you want, and they're not telling you the full story, right? They're not telling you about the back end work. They're not telling you about the truth to how they got that or whatever. And so then in lies the alchemy thing, where it was just like, I did this one thing and I have all this stuff now, and you can do it too for this, little fee, this nominal fee. And then there's the grift, right?
Why? Because
so I think people intrinsically are lazy. They
Mm-hmm.
don't want to put in the hard work, and are inclined to have, as Paul says, their ears tickled. They like the little tickly ear
entertainment.
thing.
And it plays into their ignorance, really.
Oh yeah,
They could do the research. Like, I think most people with the Liver King, for example, if you knew what you were like doing in the fitness and nutrition world, like, I would say you knew what was going on there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you didn't, like, that's your own ignorance, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true for every single thing. Like, we have so many of these charlatans in the fitness world. They're in the business
Fake
world.
natties.
It's just anything where there's this ability to ascend to a position of power or get something that it exists in, right?
And really, it's projecting a character or a set of rules or steps of how they achieved what is of such high value of success, when in fact they were doing something completely different, which is very destructive to the people that are trying to emulate what they're doing, because they can't get the same results doing those things. So essentially, you're going to make those people more depressed, and you're going to put them in a position that is, they're out of money, they're out of hope. Something's wrong with them, and you're just lying. That's why lying isn't good.
Yeah, that's why when Joe Rogan was commenting on the Liver King, he picked up on that immediately. He was like, because he listens to the Liver King's apology, and the quickly goes, Liver King says, all these depressed dudes committing suicide. And Joe's like, well, great. They're going to take your liver supplements, follow your 9 tenets of whatever, primality you have.
Ancestral.
And then they're going to still not be able to do anything. They're going to definitely blow their brains out, because it's like, this is infallible. But I guess I might be the only piece of crap where this doesn't work for it.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, they do end up doing a lot more damage.
I did hear, he did bring up, which is an interesting paradox. Like, this would be specifically on the steroid topic. Because let's take The Rock, for example.
Yeah.
If you're
guy.
if you're looking at this specimen of a human and you're like a young guy and you're like, I want to achieve that, it's like it's like a double-edged sword. If he's honest about his steroid use,
Mm-hmm.
the result could be, okay, now these young guys are like not going to try to get there naturally. They're going to be just immediately on gear.
Immediately.
Or he says he's natural. Well, then they strive for it and they probably don't achieve it.
Yeah.
But it's like, what outcome is actually worse?
Chris Hemsworth's doing the same thing too.
Yeah, he's got his app now.
Oh,
like,
man, it's
this
bad.
is the
Yeah,
and
he's
it's
not
like,
even
you use
being
gear.
Yeah, dude, for real.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah,
be
I mean,
honest with
So
where
it is a little bit of like I could see the problem. It's like, if I go out there and admit my steroid use, now all these people might just be like, well, I can't get there without it, so I guess I'm going to sign up for it too.
Here's one thing I'd like to bring up is, like, if they were completely clear and honest about it. Like, so let's see Dwayne. He's like, listen, I got to go see a doctor twice a week. I have blood work, done once a month. I have to inject my ass twice a week with test or whatever. He goes into his entire protocol, and he's like, this is actually what I have to do. And they're more open about what it means to actually get on gear. Like, your entire hormones are being replaced. You're on exogenous hormone replacement. That is a huge commitment. That is massive. That means you go on a trip to Ibiza or whatever, and somehow you get locked up and quarantined. you're in a real rough spot. Guys need to know like what they're sacrificing if they want to go after Dwayne Johnson body or some type. And if it was more clear, then it wouldn't just be as easy as like going to the gym locker room and getting on some test or whatever. They would see like, okay, do I want that body? Here are the sacrifices. They'd be able to truly weigh out what is the risk to reward here. Do I really want this? Because they'd also see some other naturals out there and see the body that is attainable through 10, 12, 15, 20 years of work. It's certainly not going to happen nearly as quickly, and you're not going to look like the Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, or Mike O'Hearn and Duck Eggs at 50 plus years old. It's just not going to happen. And say, yeah, is this okay? Is this what I want? But if you're going to go, if you are okay doing that and competing, or you just want that completely outrageous body, and you're down to make those sacrifices within your health, because you're not going to live long. You're turning on your mitochondria. You're actually aging your body faster that way. Your mTOR is getting turned on a lot faster. You're anabolic more often, which means that you're just aging faster. You're running faster. You're actually aging faster. So if you want to take that longevity back, and you want to have that body, and you want to have that whole routine every single month, you want to spend that 200 to, I mean, if you're on growth hormone, that goes even way past in the thousands. Very expensive, depending on what kind of drugs. If you want to go black market, okay, and then you're going to go cheaper, then you don't know what you're putting in your body. And if you want to go through like pharmaceutical grade stuff, then you're spending a lot more money. And then you have to know, okay, this on top of my diet, on top of all my bills, is this really worth the body?
And what Joe's saying
right?
is there's a lot more to these decisions than is on the surface. I respect people like we've heard from some of our mentors that like guys like Jordan Peterson, like the 12 rules for life, or the other guy with his 47,
laws of power.
Laws of power. What they're doing is they're opening a door. Sometimes you have to play into people's ignorance in order to get them in the door so that you can open their mind. And sometimes it's a process that on the surface looks like you're grifting or whatever. But in the end, what you're doing is you're trying to wake them up, open them up, get them used to, get them in the content, get them studied, get them some more academia, some more research, some more background, so they can make educated choices. Because in the literature, the literature's out there for anybody. If you're staring at a picture of Dwayne Johnson or, Chris Hemsworth, and you're like, I want that, and you go to him for that, you're kind of being stupid. Because these guys were schooled, they were treated. They have doctors, they have trainers, they have a whole slew of people that are instructing them as to how to get their body. They're not just waking up every day making their entire, protocol for their drugs, their food, and their workout routines. They're going to other people for this stuff.
Yeah.
So those other people are going to other people. They're trained professionals, okay? And so with the respect to the trick is, I guess, how you try and look at a resource and you're like, what are they really doing here? They're going to have to play the ignorance game. You're going to have to kind of lure them in and be like, look, I have the answers, but they're not the ones you want. But on the surface, I'm going to tell them they're the ones you want. Like we as Christians, we're like saying, okay, you want to live a fulfilled life, you accept Christ into your life, you're going to have salvation. And in a lot of ways, it sounds like an absolute win, and it is. But then you start to read the book, and it's like you have to be humble. Every day you have to start off saying, how can I serve? To be a king is to serve. Now we're trading things out. But when people usually give their life to Christ, they don't have that in their mind.
Yeah.
They have no idea what this life of service is actually about. They're just a bunch of rich, mostly overweight Christians that want to be right, that are surrounded by people in their echo chamber who think just the way they do, right? They're not trying to have conversations that edify and learn, because that's too scary. They're going to end up ruffling feathers, and then that might look bad, and the world might think we're not unified. It's just it's a ruse, because that's where all the learning and that's where all the edification, that's where the body actually gets stronger. We know that from lifting weights. When we tear down muscle, we build muscle, right? And so I think that guys like Jordan Peterson, they lure you in with the 12 rules. Rollo Tomassi an excellent example of somebody who, like, if you just read the title of his book, it's like The Rational Male. What does that say to you? It's like
I'm done with the bullshit. And I want some facts. And that's what a lot of like guys are, they don't have the time or the patience for. I was listening to a guy John turned me on to. His name is Jerry Brainium. And super great resource, very factual based, and a lot of the comments are young kids who are like, "Yo, dude, he could have said this in like 2 or 3 minutes, bro." Like they have they don't see the information he's giving
that
as
goes back
value.
to what the consumers want. And that's why this stuff sells. And I think to the grifting point, like there's a lot of, you could call them grifters, that they put in the hard work to achieve some success. So this is the other topic, kind of success porn, as they call it. That's all over the internet.
Yeah.
And I think that's one
that?
portion of like grifting is all these guys. Let's say they, I think of like Ty Lopez as an example. He sees ads all the time on YouTube, or he used to see them anyway. Yep. But they have a trade that they were successful in. Say they figured out how to do Amazon. Like that's the big one. I see all the time ads for Amazon. This is how you do drop ship on Amazon and make $1 million a month. Well, these people probably figured it out, put in a lot of hard work and trial and error to make it work, and now they're going to go sell it as like a 5 steps to make $1 million a month on Amazon. Yep. And it's like you don't actually get to see the full backstory of the amount of work that they have to put in, and the reality of you actually achieving what they achieved is probably very low.
Yep.
And
it's like those kids in the comment section. Oh, this is boring.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, well, it is boring. Wake up. That's life. You are going to get into spaces where if you want to be successful, it's about the nuts and bolts.
Yeah,
come on, guys. We're not going to. I think that if you're going to get good at anything, the idea, like the rock star, right? I want to be like him. I want to be the dude shredding guitar on the stage. Looks effortless. He's walking around like it's nothing. Big smile on his face. Just looks like he's having the best time in his life. Truth is, the dude's woodshedding in his wherever he is, his room, for hours a day. He's playing the same thing over and over again. This is not glamorous. Mm-hmm. But that same truth is applied to any domain where there's a mastery to be had. And that's what we're failing to teach kids. I think that's a big failure of the family. And that's, again, that whole thing that Rollo talks about, the church is dealing with this destruction of the family, where we're just not learning. We're learning these lessons super late in life. Sucks. Because if you grew up on a farm, you'd have to sit there and see about how reaping and then sowing, and then, some of these just absolutely inimmutable ironclad rules.
Patience.
You have to do it.
Patience.
If you want to reap some good corn, you got to till the soil right. That sucks. You got to pull all the roots out. You got to make sure there's no bugs in there. And then you got to tend it, and you got to hope that the rain comes in the correct ways. And you got to deal with all these nuanced factors so you have success.
Right.
And I was gonna say I can see it. I can see the temptation to go down that path too.
Yeah.
Because even thinking about my like fitness journey, like I could probably make some program on what I did, which is like keto diet. Let's just say like some fasted cardio, blah blah. These easy quote steps, but it's reality, it was like that took 6 years.
Right.
It was like 7 or 6 days a week for 6 years. There was ups and downs, but it's not as simple as selling a program.
No.
But people buy the programs, so it's super easy to get pulled in that direction, especially if it's a hot topic. Like right now, everything's about the red pill.
Right.
Every podcast is talking about it. You got new channels growing from it, and it's just like I'm going to jump on that quick scheme and ride it out as long as possible.
Right. Or it was like ketogenic, or it's like a diet. It's like these catchwords that get thrown around, and then people end up riding that train instead of doing the research behind it. And like Fresh and Fit, like you found out about Rollo Tomasi through Fresh and Fit because you saw the book, you saw them talking about it, you're like, that must be of value. They're at 1 million plus subscribers right now, and Rollo's, I think he's still like 300, something like that, maybe. And you think about the guys that watch that show, that see him guest, that see him get all the shout outs, that see him be the guy that's like, really they don't pull any punches as far as like who he is and how much they influenced him, yet you still don't see, you would think you would see like this massive like attention towards Rollo, because like he's the guy that created it. He's the source material, right?
That's
like
he's the
pure
human.
He's the purity, right? You want to go towards the pure stuff, right? But the guys don't. They'd rather see the girls with the big boobs sitting around talking trash, because that's entertaining. And like we do this in church too. And I wanted to bring this up because we have the same inclination within the business of church, which is why I'm saying it's a business. And this is church. What we're doing right now is church. We're talking, having a conversation together. 2 or more are gathered. The churches in our businesses, and I want to make that a big difference right now, is because
we're not saying all churches.
No,
obviously.
we're not. Not all churches. We're talking about the current situation, church in the West as it stands now, in general, is a business.
It's a business, and a lot of Christians. It's kind of cool to be a Christian now, which it wasn't for a long time.
Always is cool.
I agree, but there's a lot of different kinds of Christianity out there. There's a lot of, and why is that? I mean, people discern the Bible all different kinds of ways, and we're gonna have a really cool conversation that dovetails into this, which Mike was bringing up, within the fact that people don't do their research, and people do jump on those trains, and they do jump on these slogan based doctrinal trains, if you will, where they don't actually know why they believe what they believe. It's just they're in that echo chamber, like John said, where they're surrounded by this, but they don't actually have any idea what they really believe. It's just what feels good. And they're also giving money to these churches, and they're also buying into this thing monetarily. And that's the issue. Is
let's talk about the aftermath, because I think we've hit during this conversation several times what's going on. You have ignorance, you have the person trying to make money, sell them this easy fix, silver bullet. But then what happens when that transpires so many times? So what we see happen is, and you've met people like this, guaranteed. It's the person, they may not be old. Usually they are a little old. You hear the word cynic, sort of jaded. These are adjectives for them. And they'll be like, yeah, you buy into it, and, you kicked around. You're sort of like calcified and just bruised up and just beat down, dude. And you don't engage the world anymore. You're kind of just waiting to die, and you're not interested in new stuff. You're not interested in people anymore. And Satan's really had his way with you at that point. Granted, we're all going to have moments where we're spending in that valley, but you don't want to stay there. And what happens is if we're not encouraged about humility and the fact that we have to be learning, and that we're looking for source materials, we're looking for truth in the most refined way possible, right? And that takes work. It takes applying yourself. People don't like to read books. You got to read books. It creates mental toughness and strength. So you don't end up like that person, because that's the weakest state you can be in.
Well, what's interesting is usually people have
after
a disagreement, and so many times within what we were talking about earlier on is a lot of these people that are a lot of these I don't know what to really call them, but they're the people that jump on the bandwagons, the slogan wagons, the hot topics, the soundbiters, the TikTokers, these people that they think they know what something's about. But like Red Pill, because they've seen a couple of TikToks or clips, shorts, rampant. But they've never read the books. They've never done any of these things. The people that think they're Christians, but they've never, read the Bible. They haven't done any deep dives into it. So, what we on our comments, we have some these people are oftentimes very outspoken, and it's their way or the highway, and the conversation is never. It's never able to be had.
There's no humility.
But if you do have that humility, and someone does catch you with your ass hanging out, as Rolo says, that oftentimes is such a great moment, because then you actually do the research. Because I wish people were more instinctual as to saying, I would like to figure that out. I was more inspirational, But unfortunately, it's not. Most of the time, it's people get called out. I remember when I was a kid, I would be called an idiot or say something wrong. I'd be like, oh shit, I need to go research that real quick, because I made a fool of myself, and I don't like feeling like a fool, because I want to be smart, And I think that's what has, and a lot of what we're dealing with is people that want to eliminate the shame that's associated with that, which eliminates people's digging into what's going on.
Yeah. I was thinking, as far as to bring the church into the grifter example, I'm going to just paint this out, see if this makes sense. If you got, right now with the Red Pill, big complaint is all these, you could say, soundbite people being representations of it.
Yeah.
And that's just a huge problem.
They're diplomating a false representation.
They're providing a false representation. Well, what is the modern church that we are criticizing? Not all churches. You could say, I'm not saying this is fact. It's kind of an opinion I'm just working out right now. But it's almost like a lot of sermons, I would say, are the grifter version of the Bible, because they're taking they're getting people in the door with lights, cameras, and action. As far as they're just making a production, getting people in the door,
good music,
and then they're providing basically a TED Talk sermon with some Bible verses. And then those are called the soundbites, and then those people are going out being representations of Christ, and then like they don't, because they're not actually digging into the Bible in any sort of way. You're getting a couple verses on Sunday. You have no idea what the context is of the Bible or the verses or the book that's in there. They're probably not reading it themselves, and like that's their whole experience of Christianity is the soundbite version of Christianity.
100%. And you know what I think? What I think adds to that, I hear Jocko point this out a lot, and I love him for it because as a musician, everybody, like even my wife, sometimes my mom, they think that it's always fun. My wife not so much because she's a painter; she understands that. But it's not about inspiration, man. It's not about being inspired to do the right thing every time. It's not about that TED Talk that's going to leave you feeling so good about yourself that you go out and do the right thing. It's about doing the right thing out of lacking.
Discipline.
That's what the faith tells us. It's about giving out of lacking so that there's a room for faith. It's like, I'm giving and I don't know how I'm going to do this. And that's hard work. That's hard to do. I don't care who you are and how much you think you have. Those moments are going to come up, those faith tests. And it's not about inspiration, man. But we put inspiration so high, this feeling, this emotion, this sensuality, which is funny because we just read about the fruit of the Spirit. And what precedes that is what Paul talks about the flesh. And sensuality is a big one. And it's it's a subject worth paying attention to because it's not easy to just... It takes work to think about it. What is the sensorium we have? How is that reacting with our spiritual being? You can become too much inclined towards that, where inspiration is all of a sudden your barometer for how in tune with God you are. And it's like Jesus would go on a whole night of prayer. He's weeping, crying out to God. He's creating inspiration in his devotion, which is more of what we need in the church. And that's why I like the Eastern Orthodox, right? The Eastern Orthodox Church, for me, I think they're really cool. They implement fasting. They look at these fleshly bodies as something that need to be put into submission every single month, and they take it seriously. And it's not about how inspired are you to fast today, or how inspired were you after that, or that was a great sermon. Because I know what they're trying to do. A lot of times preachers are like, look, we're going to take a verse from here, that you get a verse from, 10 books at the end of it. And you're like, oh, wow, that was a cool message. I see how the Bible has this continuity, and that's great. But, reading a whole chapter, there's a story that's already there that you need to have a general understanding of before you start stringing stuff together. It's like, get the general understanding of the Bible. I mean, sure, these little speeches are nice, but you're not going to get the meat of like devotion and self-sacrifice out of being inspired all the time in a fleshly way. You're not going to feel that all the time.
You say inspired, but it's also motivation. Like people are looking to be motivated. Like they want that dopamine. Like
back in the day, it used to be hell and brimstone, right? It was like a fear motivation thing, right?
Survival.
Like in the early
survival.
For a long time, I feel like, especially in the Southern Baptist Church, the Protestants maybe were like that. I'm not too sure. The Anglicans and the Catholics definitely had a lot of that, shame, guilt. And it was like motivation out of fear, because motivation is what we're talking about. But I'm saying the church nowadays has that. They're so addicted to the inspiring speech that
motivates them to...
motivates, some motivation out of fear, some motivation out of devotion.
Or some TED Talks, which is much more common right now. But it's what we're trying to outline is that when you are discerning whether it's a fitness influencer or it's a church you want to go to or a specific piece of doctrine, be interested in source information. Be willing to invest deeply into what it is that's going on. Have a conversation with somebody that you might not agree with. Stay away from those trains of thought that are gilded in, the blinders type of thing. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's not good, especially if you're a novice or an amateur in something. You really need to have your focus open, your peripherals wide open. If you are an extreme expert and you're in your groove and you're focusing, you need to have a good, strong focus at that point in time. It's different. So those are important for us to know as people. We want to be excited. We want the dopamine. We want to be interested. That's important. But the knowledge itself is what's of interest. You know what I mean? Like, it's all fun to handle a nice, AR-15, but if you don't know how to open it up and clean it and understand how that weapon works, it's not going to do you very much. Sure, it feels powerful in your hands, but it's really not very powerful if you don't know how to use it.
That's the same thing that goes in line with fitness. That 90-day program or your hard 75, great. It'll give you discipline. It'll put you show you what you can do with the day and what you are able to do. But there's the next step into that. Everybody's built differently. God speaks to everybody sovereignly. He's not on a megaphone. That's why we have so many different doctrines. That's why there's so many different training styles that all produce great bodies. There's a lot of great ways to get a good body. What kind of body do you want? What did God make you to do? Look into that. It's not what he does. It's not what she does. It might not be the right thing for you. But if you don't put the investment in, you'll never know what your purpose is. And that's what the hard part is. What you were talking about is when you don't have that motivation and that inspiration and you're really just like, I have to do this, you're illuminating something that was not there before. And usually the inspiration is comes from seeing land. You know what I mean? Like when the ship is out at sea, no one can see anything, and they're just like in the doldrums and they're just floating around. Very depressing place. There's no wind in the sails. No one knows what's going on. But once you see that seagull, you see that land, everyone comes back up in their motivation. They're happy. They're excited. You have to be able to bring those things up within your life, which takes the practice of discipline, which takes the practice of doing that over and over and over again.
I think inspiration is taking the role of duty. Men are inspired by the duty, and there's no welcoming committee every single time you do something great. It's all being glory for the Lord. And I think that in the red pill community, what I like to see are the guys who aren't looking to get the Lamborghinis or any of these kind of things, like as this sort of misconstrued version of an alpha. And you have to have this to be an alpha. The sense of duty that we have in the Bible is very, very cut and clear. And that's why talking about these things, I can see how somebody listening to this might get a little bit confused, because then it's like, well, if I'm supposed to not be flexible with my beliefs, or in terms, what we're really trying to say is be able to grow in your beliefs, allow God to shape you continually, then you can put a foot into like this progressive Christianity thing. And I want to be careful to explain to people the difference here. The difference is progressive Christianity is allowing secular culture in, the negative elements of secular culture, because there are many positive things that you can use, but they're letting the negative things in that are interfering with the black and white parameters the Bible gives us. And you can't do that. You can't give your bowl of lentils up for your birthright and keep your birthright. It's not going to happen. But what you can do is acknowledge that this document is a living word, and that there's going to be people who come into the church very frequently, hopefully if it's a living church, that are going to extol and edify the church with teaching that's going to come against some of the conventions that are keeping the church stifled from growing. And that's where people get combative, defensive.
And to clarify, those are man-made conventions.
Those are man-made. Those are man-made conventions that it's like the Pharisees in the Mishnah. It's they're auxiliary, they're additional, they're fencing in, their help tools that are not from the Bible. And so what happens for us, the hard job that we, in the Iron Disciples, God has given us this job, and every one of you in the world has the same job, which is to come up against deception and to be fighters for truth. And what we encounter over and over again, and I'm going to try and break it down. I guess we talked to Rollo, and it was cool because he talked about an example with Jedediah where he came at her with truth. That truth interfered with her man-made conventions that were very close to her heart. So in many ways, she must have felt like Rollo was kind of cutting out her heart. And, anybody coming at you that way, where you're getting like, you're going to try and fight back, right? This is my life organ. You're taking it away, and that's the feeling you have. And then in the end, she found out that what he was saying, because luckily this woman's studied and she had cause to look further into what he was saying, came back and said, Rollo, you're right. These things are true, and it's affected me positively. But there was that serious friction moment that occurred. And in church, we're going to get that. We're going to get major pushback because they feel like you're cutting out their heart. And if they believe you, it's heresy, or it's so controversial because they don't know their Bible that they feel like you're attacking the Bible, or they're attacking your faith.
And I think if they disagree with something we say, come at us with the Bible and show us where we're wrong. That's what we want.
Yeah.
That's what we want.
Right. Yeah.
We're not here claiming we have the answer. We're here talking about ideas and discussing where maybe the church is wrong in some areas. And if we're wrong, we want to be called out on that.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of things in the Bible, questions like our last podcast or the one before, the questions
for God.
Questions for God. There's a lot of things where we don't know the answer, but
there isn't an answer.
There isn't.
It's just fun to talk about.
Exactly. Right? And I think that that's okay. And I think that by doing that, we're allowing God to give us living revelation in the form of community based on just asking these things.
And that the interesting part was we had Christians in our comments that are basically mad at us for asking those questions. Like, don't question God.
Yeah.
Just have faith in why. Because we posted a reel on why didn't God like destroy Satan?
Right.
And
it was open-ended. It was like a question. It was to get people to talk.
This was a question. And it was
what do you guys think?
Why are you asking that base question? Like some of the responses. Like,
they're so defensive that they think that you might be losing your faith because you asked that question. Like, oh my gosh, they're one step away from losing their faith. It's like, no, I'm not. I actually have a high view of Scripture. There's plenty of things in prophecy you don't understand. No one does. And this is one of these questions that I'd like to honestly ask God about. So great. And it's not like you can tell me I'm wrong on that. We're just talking. It's just an idea that if I got to heaven and I get to sit on God's knee, I'm going to be the annoying stepchild asking God a ton of questions. Let's just be honest.
I think that's
really asking him a bunch.
I think that's really common within like a lot of religious people. And, to question or to have doubts is considered like a lack of strength. We even see that within, like we're talking about fitness influencers or, our politicians or like, actors. It's like they lack that humbleness, to be like, because you don't see it as a sign of strength to be like, well, I really wonder about this or I really don't know how I did that or why this person, that questioning seems like weakness to people so often, especially when you're talking about your faith or what you believe, because a conviction is supposed to be ironclad, gilded in titanium type of thing.
Because I think they miss out on faith, right? Because what is faith? If it's all known to you and it's all just ironclad, faith fills the gap because God is God and you are not. And there's going to be a ton of things everlasting that you will never, ever have complete understanding of. And therein lies faith, which is devotion to God's supremacy.
And the question, if you don't have a question, where are you going? There's no destination. There's no progress to be made. There's no future, right? There's always a question. There's always an unanswered. There's always a mystery.
And for the person that actually, I believe, enjoys life, like to enjoy life is to know that there's something more to understand. There's something more to the story. There's something more, and how boring is it just to be like, this is it? Then it's like the fish bowl. It's like
terrible.
Wow. There's going to come a point where I'm omniscient like God. You're never. And that would just take away from the experience that we have been given, which is the experience of life right now, which is to struggle on. We have imperfect memories. I could remember something brilliant that I thought of last week. It's not here today, and stuff like that. It's just keeping us in this human place where if it wasn't for that, we would not have a reason to rely on God. We have to rely on Him. We have the Holy Spirit as a helper because it's not coming from us all the time.
Yeah, we contend a lot against that in the church and even within the comment section to some of our reels, which is just asking a question innocently, what you would ask to God if you were in heaven, right? It's like the threat becomes this division, this divisive factor within a body that should be fighting other pathogens. Like that's not a pathogen, right? That's not a divisive factor. That's not something that's about what Christ taught. This is not something that's actually like part of the black and white doctrine. This is ancillary. This is not, or ancillary, or however you say that. This isn't part of one of those things. But a lot of, and that's why we have over 700 different sects of Christianity. They're all reading the same book, you know what I mean? But they're coming up with these different doctrines that they are willing to go to the grave with over. And you have to ask yourself, like, is this a cornerstone to helping me love people better? Is this a cornerstone to help me understand, like, what we're doing right now here in this life? You know, like, I find that to be one of those, like, it's very arrogant in some ways.
Yeah,
it's like so arrogant. It's like, okay, because you want to live out Amish style, everyone else is, chooses to use a cell phone or whatever. And that's it's just a very bland contrast there. But there's a lot of that going on, and it's very subtle. And it gives these people this moral high ground where they look at other people as less than them because they don't hold that same doctrinal foundation, which is just it's divisive within the body when it should be like that the energy should be towards like other pathogens, like real things that are real issues.
So what are some of the issues in the church now? What are the big ones, that say destroy the family and stuff like what do you see?
Well, you got things like age of the earth. You got importance of baptism, I'd say. Mm-hmm. You got kind of the works versus the Catholics, I think, saved by grace versus also needing works. I don't know what else.
There's predestination.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It's a big one. Then
and a lot, like, that's the thing, like you're saying, it's arrogant.
King James versus
like, imagine to say
deep.
when you say you claim to have the truth on the topic on these more gray, like you can say you have the truth on like thou shalt not kill, like that's not a question
straight
but
up.
On these gray these more gray area things, to say you have the truth, it's like you're claiming you knew what the author meant exactly 2,000 years ago. You have the right perfect translation. What God meant out of that story. Like you're claiming such big things,
and it's worth saying to someone that they're going to hell and that they're absolutely wrong.
Not even that they're going to hell, but even that they're just wrong. Like
wrong.
Just like to not have the humility. Like, hey, like instead of worrying like, hey, you're just straight up wrong. It's more like, hey, I got a different thought on this. Like, what do you think?
Yeah. Open up to a conversation.
Yeah, it's not like that's what's been nuts in our comments.
I wish
like you
more
said,
of that, because like that is a conversation. Like, I like to think about Paul and Peter when Paul's like, yo, we can eat different foods and Gentiles don't need to be having their pee-pees chopped off. And Peter's like, all right, I think about this. Then he gets a dream where he's eating all this unclean food. And you can tell that was a big, hard thing for him to let go, right? He didn't want to let it go. He liked his Jewishness. And to a certain degree, Peter being Peter, wanted to push that on other people. God bless him. He probably thought it was the right thing to do. But that was very far from what he thought. It was like so far outside of what he thought should happen that it's kind of mind-blowing. He had to humble himself, right? But to just have that kind of a reaction, where it's like, I have a different thought on this. And it's not, and really what it's saying is like, we might not either of us be correct. And in this life, maybe we'll never know. But we can still talk about it as brothers because we have to have faith God can do some kind of work here. Even if it's not answer, maybe we're just bonding, talking. Maybe there's some other focus going on.
Maybe you could learn
the question.
Like Mike was saying, he's like, what text or what text, like what's the history behind why you believe it? Like there's the learning that comes into it. It's because you're actually taking facts into consideration. It's not just what someone said on Sunday, or you saw some clip on TikTok and now you choose to believe it because it made sense to your brain. You know what I mean? It's like, are you sourcing this stuff out? And usually if they are, then they're open to a conversation. That's what you really want to have with and it's super hard to do with Christians nowadays. Like if you bring up some data or some facts or something that, like, even a question to God, about like, why did you allow Lucifer to keep messing with us after he screwed over Adam and Eve? Like, why didn't you just get rid of him? Like, that is considered a threat. Like, those kind of conversations.
It's funny because we can preface those questions to, like, and I think if we were smarter, we'd do this more often. But we should preface by saying, I know God has purpose in this.
Yeah.
And that it makes sense. Okay? I'm not saying that God was, didn't have his head screwed on straight when he did that and just kind of rolled the things. It's not what we're saying.
Dude, it reminds me of like
we're not saying that ever. What we are saying is God's mind is infinite and vast. And of course, if that's the nature of God, I am going to be the annoying stepchild asking questions, or I'm going to be that kid, that son that's intensely interested in the
children
knowledge
ask
of his
why
father.
all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's fair.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that my father's not a bullshit artist. and he's going to tell you the truth. He's going to tell you the truths that you need to have now.
Yeah.
He's not going to
make up some lie just to be dad.
No, and you say, how does a Hemi work? Well, son, it's has something to do with some crystals and just this, and it's like total crap. And you're like, you know what? I'm not going to get anything true out of this. I'm not going to get a real answer out of this. And our Father gives us real, truthful answers every single time. What we need.
And sometimes there's no answer, and that's the answer. You have to be okay with it and just kind of discover things for yourself. So I think that's the point of this podcast, guys.
I want to point out two more things.
Yeah,
okay. So in the church in the West, there's a big issue going on with men's role.
Oh, we're getting into that, dude.
Well, I just want to point that out as
it's a whole podcast.
We talked about doctrine and all these underlying issues that cause division in the church, and they exist. But and that goes back to one of our other questions, like why did God make men and female, and why is God referred to as a he? Well, the truth is God is referred to as a he because he is the source. We look at he as a patriarch and as the definer of direction, right? He is the head. And so when you look at the man's role in relationship as God said it should be, we're supposed to be the head of the relationships of the family. And that has been under fire big time in the church. And it's come to a place where for so long it's been going on where the families now are they're starting to fragment. And we see that in the politics these days. We see that in the gender issues. And men aren't making decisions as they should. And so a big prayer on all of your hearts should be, if you care about the church and you want to see the church get back on its feet and start really engaging this world in a positive way, is going to be for the men to rediscover what God has given us to do in the church and to be proper husbands, proper fathers, and really be encouraged by the fact that that is one of the hugest issues the church is facing right now. You can talk about doctrine all you want. You can talk about questions about why God did this or that all you want, and that's fun. But the pulse is weak in the church, and it has a lot to do with men being deceived into actions and being the placeholder that is not what they are doing. And so think about that, and I want to encourage the youth to take time to understand truly what red pill is, because therein lies a lot of evidence substantiating that claim, and that's true in the secular world too, not just our faith, our Christian brothers and sisters. And this is the enemy's work here. This is what we're talking about. So let that be big on your heads, big in your hearts, and pray about it, think about it, educate yourselves on that, because it's a reason why the churches are dying, and we were talking to Rolo, I think it was in the 80s, it's just been starting to go way down, way down, and the populations that are in church, people who are attending, and there is a reason for that. There is a reason why this is happening. So I wanted to put that out there before we ended this.
And that'll be a whole nother podcast at some point.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah,
that's
definitely.
just the tip of the iceberg.
Definitely.
But it is one of those things that's causing division in the church.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of young guys out there now that are okay with being, outliers and doing the research and doing stuff that's not cool, and we're doing the research. And I think that's the whole red pill movement with like some of the more what would you call it, like the more diligent red pillars out there instead of the
soundbiters.
Soundbiters.
So yeah, get off the TikTok and the sound bites. They're fun every once in a while, guys, and it's a good thing to do, to just let some steam off, maybe decompress every once in a while. But try to orient yourself away from that type of dopaminergic. It's what's going on. It's just the charisma. It's entertainment. Get you going in the wrong way. You want to do the research. You want to put it down. Beware of the charlatans. Beware of the people that are out there that are super charismatic, that get you feeling really good, because once you're feeling really good, sometimes you don't listen as attentively.
Instead,
to the
pay more
details.
attention to duty, devotion,
long-suffering, servitude, and like mining those terms to the point, like mine into them deep, dig in deep.
Yeah, if we put more value on that, then maybe we'll have better leaders and politicians and pastors and churches and because we're not putting so much limelight on the garbage.
And I'd like to say something else that's completely off base, but I've made it my own. Any of you guys in the workout community, you guys have heard about the Liver King, okay? And don't like the guy at all. Never have from the beginning. Just looks like an annoying sunburnt tomato. But to be truthful, I'm not looking at any more of his content. Nothing. Even videos that are trying to, say he's a liar. People like this are class act charlatans. And these people, they turn bad press into good press. And the more you're paying attention to them, the more you're just feeding into their master plan. So just turn off to them. Call a spade, and screw the entertainment factor, like Joe's saying. It's not about entertainment. Your time can be better spent, dude.
It's like Joe Rogan said. He's like, he wanted to get on his podcast. Like, what's he going to say? The same thing he already said? I'm over it. Like, it's done. It's laid to rest. Rip, dude. Like
you got a taste for crap. You want to eat some more crap?
He's dead. He's gone. He's over. He's finished. Right? Yeah. Let's treat it that way.
I doubt it, but we'll see.
Well, I mean,
that's
it's
what Joe
up
Rogan
to us,
said.
right? It's up to us. It's up to us.
I know how humans work. I don't think he's so.
No, I would agree. Yeah,
And
I
it's
know
just
you're taking the stance of just being like, let's be real here.
Being a realist.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yep.
that's why I'm talking to our dudes. Because it's easy for even smart guys to just be like, oh, let me see what's happening with this idiot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, well, don't do it.
It's fun to watch a dumpster fire, right?
Sometimes, but then it's like, I mean, you will start smelling like trash after a while.
Yeah, you will smell like trash.
So,
You watch the dumpster fire, you smell like trash.
Yep.
Smell like garbage. I think that's a good place to end. And that was great. Thank you, Rolo, for awesome conversation today. Getting the juices flowing, great. It's always good to hear a good speaker because they orient you in
True.
a very awesome way. Just to hear someone who brings language into like almost a mathematical precision. It clears up the thoughts and it makes you. It helps develop a better, clearer thinking. Even for me, when I hear people that are able to speak correctly, that have a good way of talking, that bring complex concepts together, it's beautiful for what it does to the thought.
It's refreshing.
Yes, it is.
And thank you so much. And thank you, Mike, for dealing with all the correspondence.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a job, bro. So thank you.
If you didn't have to go to Miami.
Right on. All right, let's end with a prayer. Who wants to lead?
I will.
All right.
Do it. Thank you, Father, for these awesome guys, for this beautiful world and all this abundance. Lord, help train our hearts and our minds into wanting the good things in life, Lord. To not get near those dumpster fires for too long and start smelling like garbage, Father. Thank you for your salvation and for all this knowledge that's at our fingertips. Give us a hunger for it. Let us become real strong men, undivisible, Father, but open to conversation and doubts and questions, because that is how we travel on this long journey, Lord, that will go on, even when we get to heaven. I believe it will continue. And I look forward to meeting you and asking you all kinds of questions. I will be that guy. In Jesus' name, amen.